The StreamSets DataOps platform is the world's first single platform for building smart data pipelines across hybrid and multi-cloud architectures. You can build, run, monitor, and manage data pipelines confidently with an end-to-end data integration platform that's built for constant change. Amp up your productivity with easy-to-navigate interface with hundreds of pre-built sources and destinations. Once you're up and running, your smart data pipelines are resilient to data drift, those ongoing and unexpected changes in your data infrastructure and pipelines. Finally, you have one single pane of glass for operating and monitoring all of your data pipelines. Get started today building data pipelines in minutes for free at streamsets.com/tagdata. The first 10 listeners of this podcast that subscribe to StreamSets Professional tier will receive 2 months free after their first month.
Hello, I'm Dr. Beverly Wright, and thanks for joining Tag Data Talk. With us today, we have Scott Taylor, and we're talking about aligning IT data function with data science efforts. Thanks for being here, Scott.
Great to be here, Beverly. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, let's start off with a little background. Tell us, Scott, why are you so cool?
Why am I so cool? So Scott Taylor, the data whisperer. I help calm data down. That's what we all have to do in the data space. We have to calm data down. Data is unruly, data is corrupt, data is big, data is all over the place. We got to train it, calm it down, make sure people can use it. I try to explain that in really business accessible ways. Try to have a little fun with it. As you know, I do it sometimes with puppets. I definitely want to get some puppet tips from you since I know you're a pro as well. Cartoons. I can do white papers, but believe me, puppet shows get a lot more engagement. Couple other nifty talents. I can blow a square bubble. I can juggle pins. But in a work environment, I'm always trying to find the simple, if possible, entertaining, if definitely possible, humorous way to explain rather serious and important points around data across an enterprise.
That's fantastic. I love that. I have never heard that as a special school, square bubbles. I'll have to remember.
Square bubbles, yes. It's actually, technically, it's a bubble cube. But I've got to do a video on that at some point, yes. So.
Oh my gosh. No, I don't know if you want to give that secret away. That's not funny. Well, I know you've got a lot of accomplishments, so we really, really appreciate you being here today. So let's start with what do we mean when we talk about, the IT data as like one camp, and then the data science and analytics as like another camp? What can you describe these camps? Who are these people and what do they do?
I think about the space in really two big buckets. There's the data management, kind of data governance, data stewardship side, and then there's the business intelligence, analytics, data science side. And that data management side is about determining the truth in data. The BI and data science side is about deriving meaning. I firmly believe, and one of my core tenets is you must determine the truth first before you derive meaning. I'm obviously on the truth team, hence the meaning of my truth hat here. It's not chicken or egg, it is egg and omelet. You need truth to get adequate meaning from the business. And a lot of people skip that or don't connect that or don't think of it, I think, as clearly as that and get a lot more complicated around a whole bunch of other issues. But if you just recognize, which everybody who works with data does recognize that. If you're data science, you're trying to manage, understand the data you've got before you do anything really with it. But I think there's a much more holistic, systematic, strategic way to approach it.
That's awesome. So let me rephrase that and then I'm going to get my question out. I love your hat, by the way. I must have one.
All right, well, I'm opening up a merch page soon. So once the website comes.
Be like Truth, Scott Taylor on the back.
That's it.
That's cool. I love it. So data management and then BI, analytics, data science. Totally love that. Truth is the data, and then meaning or insights or, what is it? What's the point of it is the BI, analytics, data science. Love that. And you're saying that these are in sequence. This is a rail car situation where you got to have the truth and the data and something of substance before you can really make meaningful anything out of it that you can consume, like a vegan omelet. Like I don't eat omelets, but I eat vegan omelets. Fantastic. So what
Just
is
a
the problem?
metaphor, egg and
Yeah, I
omelet.
know. I got you. I got you. What is the problem? I mean, it sounds kind of, sort of simple. Like, what's the problem?
What I hear, the reason I think there's a big problem is because you hear data scientists all the time almost proudly declaiming that they spend somewhere between 60 and let's say 120% of their time munging and wrangling data. You look at a discipline and wonder, if you're spending 80% of your time doing something that isn't what you're called, then what are you? And I don't hear a lot of data scientists talking about how to solve that issue at the source.
Right.
Now, there may be some out there. There's plenty of folks talking about how to do that little munging work, cleansing it, restructuring it once they're in the process of trying to create whether they're algorithm or machine learning. But there's a better place to do most of it.
Yes.
So I think there's a way to kind of stamp out munging and wrangling in our lifetime. We might not get all of it, but if we can reduce it by 20%, 50%, 100, that's a lot of time that people are talking about wasting that they wouldn't be wasting anymore.
Well, can you imagine like if the finance team said, oh, well, we spend the majority of our time marketing. What? Why is finance not doing finance?
Excellent point.
It's the strangest thing. And so, this is definitely a very prevalent practice of the data scientists not actually doing data science for the majority of their work. And I have to say, this has major consequences. Like students that graduate, they go into a job, they think they're going to do data science, and the majority of their time is spent data munging. Their expectations, there's a huge gap between what we expect. What are the risks of having this happen? Like what's the like? Let's say that you do have to spend most of your time, kind of munging and wrangling and that sort of thing. So what are some of the risks associated with that?
Can we back up a minute and talk about the difference between munging and wrangling?
Yeah,
I sort of use those interchangeably.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see as I'm turning the mic around here? What do you see as what's the difference between data munging and data wrangling? I'd love to get that set in my mind.
Well, and this is just a Beverly Wright definition, but the data wrangling, to me, data wrangling is you're locating and you're accessing data in different silos or different tactically speaking in different servers or wherever they might be. Whereas data munging is more cleaning the data. This is removing outliers. This is determining potentially converting into a log or something like that to smooth the data and get it into a workable format for the analytics.
Okay.
So I've heard people use munging to kind of mean like once the data is ready, then I munge it by getting it more model ready, because having the data ready and available and accessible is never good enough. You've always got to do something to it.
Sure.
So I think accessing is more wrangling, and then munging is probably more.
Well, wrangling is, if you're a cattle wrangler, you're pulling things together. Munging feels like it's a verb. It's something that's, merging, munging, integrating. But both of those things, a lot of that similar activity is squarely in the responsibility of the data management part of an organization, whose job it is to understand not just the lineage, but to catalog all the disparate data sources. Every organization has all these disparate data sources, lots of silos, lots of enterprise systems that spin off different versions of the same thing. So the practice that I come from in the data space is MDM, master data management. Master data, metadata, reference data, all those foundational piece parts that provide the structure for an organization to consistently look at the entities that are important to that business in a common way. I don't think there's any more important data at an organization than master data.
Right.
It's it's the hardest working data in the data business, right? So if you think about customer, I've got a customer record, I've got a product hierarchy, I've got some sort of geography definitions. All that on a wholesale or an enterprise basis is being handled by the data management part of the organization. When I hear, and again, most of it's anecdotal, but there's so much of it that's why we're even having this conversation, because of our discussion about just the volume, velocity, and variety of complaints that go on in the data science world. You go, how many of these people are talking to the data management side? Is there a direct communication, constant collaboration between data management and data science and business intelligence, between determining the truth and deriving meaning? And so if some of that wrangling is understanding where every instance of customer is, in a perfect world, the MDM group has already done that.
Yeah. No,
harmonize that to a common view. If part of the munging process includes getting rid of duplicates, fixing hierarchies, aligning taxonomies, defining geographies, these 4 basic dimensions are, again, core to what a good MDM, data governance, data stewardship, data management, whatever you want to call it, that part of the world, does. Now, it's not going to, as you say, it's not going to be everything. There's always going to be work done to get it into the model, to look for outliers in that context. But if there's been a whole lot of time just deduping customer and product records,
yes,
making up hierarchies, you know, the organization, if they've already established an MDM program and data governance program, they have already determined that truth for the organization. They can already handle the truth for that enterprise. They've established, okay, here is our customer hierarchy. And they may have multiple ones, like when you're doing finance, here's how finance looks at it. Here's how marketing looks at it. Here's how sales looks at it. Here's our total executive view for the C-level. Those should be established in reporting. If you're a data scientist, don't go making that stuff up. Like trying to come up with that on your own, not making it up to fool somebody, but going, oh, gee, I wonder if this is work should have been done already. That's my plea to the space.
Okay, so this is great. I always love talking to you, Scott, but this is great. So there's a couple of things I saw as the issues and the consequences associated with having, you know, your finance people doing marketing, or in this case, your data scientists doing all the data cleansing and that sort of thing. And so this is how I've sort of boiled down everything you just said. The only one I'm adding is the expectations piece of it. So one thing is, like I was mentioning, data scientists, we as a community, we generally hate that. I used to literally, Scott, this is how sick and wrong I am. I used to dream about model ready data. Okay. We want model ready data. I know. I probably shouldn't have recorded that, but we don't want to have to do all that. Usually we want data that's already ready to go into a model. We want model ready data. So the expectations are a little whacked. Secondly is, it's, as you're saying, it's not their expertise. You know, there's people where that's their expertise, is that they understand the data. A third part is, and you were saying this, why would you reinvent it? Why would you reinvent for that specific thing when more than likely it needs to be shared, and there needs to be a sense of the glass box, not the opaque process that's going on to modify, or not modify the data, but get it cleaned and munged and that sort of thing.
Yeah, structured, organized, all those things that, you know, to provide a standard for the organization.
Yes. And
is really, you know, that's how I explain it to business leaders who don't care about MDM and data models and methodologies and all the rest. It's like, at minimum, you need to establish a standard for your organization so things will connect better.
Yes. Okay.
Love it. It's the whole point here. So you know that what you're looking at is the thing you should be looking at.
Right. And why are people, I mean, it seems so obvious when we're talking about it, but what are the barriers? What is preventing data scientists from doing more data science, and IT data people from managing why are the pegs falling into the wrong places? Help us here.
I don't know all the answers. I'm on a quest to try and figure out more of this, because I really feel like there's an opportunity there to help unite these groups. Part of it, however, there's probably multiple answers. So not picking on anybody individually, but as these two groups face off with each other, there is a tone in the market from analytics leaders that is, to a certain extent, lessens the value of what the data management community does. An example is I've been to more than enough conferences where a BI or an analytics or data science person will get up there and talk about their capabilities by making it a zero-sum game with the data management side. So they'll say things like, data is just a commodity. Data is worthless until we turn it into insight. Data is just a cost center. Data's got nothing, it's data, information, knowledge, wisdom. That's where you really want to get. And I go, what's up with that? Why does it have to be a zero-sum game? Why does it have to be confrontational? You're talking about work of the people that I work with. They do good work. They're proud of it. And the example I use often is if you ever heard a baker stand up and say, flour is worthless until I turn it into bread. No,
that's
they don't. No, they just stack the ingredients.
Yes.
It's not about whose stuff is better. We're all part of the same organization. And it bristles against me. So I'll be the guy in the room yelling, no, it's not. And I'm trying to call out some of those leaders and say, that doesn't make your case any better. It devalues what another part of the organization does, which, by the way, I'd say somewhere between 100 and 120% of your value is coming out of how good the data you've got. And these people are charged with creating that data and making it trustworthy for the organization. The overriding thing that it also does is it provides this, not provide, but the impression the business side gets is data science is complaining about the data management's not involved. These guys are bickering about who's important. They can't even agree.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
And it's like there's just a cacophony of typical data people all bickering with each other, arguing about whatever, and they're using a bunch of terms I don't know. If the business doesn't support all this, then it's not going to happen. I hear data scientists talk all the time about how they want to bring value to the business or ways to understand that. That's where I think the focus on is, how you start to learn the business. And master data, reference data, metadata is the data about the business.
Yes,
it's
that's fantastic.
The bedrock data you can get. If you're grossly oversimplify it, if a data scientist is going to do a methodology to add a lot of columns to a spreadsheet, right? Insights, predictive indicators, sentiment, whatever those columns of data are. You got to align them to a row. What's that about? The columns are about the row. The row is the master data.
Yeah.
Customers, products, vendors, suppliers, whatever it is. And we got a bunch of other stuff about it. I know the graph people get a little bit like, no, this is a metaphor here. It's just rows.
Right.
Not a methodology, but it's a way to think about it that I think shows kind of some of those dysfunctions.
Yeah, a dysfunction is a good word for it. And I'm definitely going to steal the flour and the baker analogy.
There you go. You don't have to steal it. Just give me proper attribution. You can use it all day long.
That's right. That's right.
Scott Taylor Davis once said, yes.
That's right. So some of the barriers you outlined, these are great. There's somewhat of a confrontational relationship. There's a little bit of a imposed hierarchy, almost like, we are the data scientists and y'all are just the data mungers over here.
Yeah. You're just the data stewards.
Kind of bickering that happens between the two groups. So all those things make for the barriers. And you already mentioned, I want to talk about solutioning a little bit. You already mentioned a couple things. One was, are these people really communicating?
Right.
And communication is a two-way street. And you also talked about collaborating.
Yeah. And I'm not saying the data managers are out there begging for the data scientists to come into the room either. I just think that there's an opportunity for these two groups to come together in a much more collaborative way. One feeds the other. If data doesn't get meaning, then it isn't bringing value.
Yeah.
If meaning isn't based on, analytics isn't based on truth, then it's meaningless.
Right. Like what's
There's
the point?
A natural Reese's peanut butter cup synergy here of let's mix these two together and they'll and then everybody will be happier. And,
yes, it would seem. So how can you help with that? Like what's something that a company could do potentially to increase the level of collaboration between data IT and the analytics, people.
I think that, a personification of part of the solution, I think, is the chief data officer who has, as a CDO, has purview over all this activity. And my hunches would be less likely to be patient enough to let it keep going. Because if they've got their hand on managing the data and then they've got, a foot in the canoe around getting enterprise value out of it, they got to see that connection at a very high strategic level. On a day-to-day basis, it's like if you're a data scientist, go meet somebody and, find somebody in your organization with the title data governance, data stewardship. See what they've got. Data, not to revert back to the oldest cliche in the data space, garbage in, garbage out. Those data managers are there to make sure the garbage doesn't get in.
Yeah. No, this is great. So some of the things that I see, because I like how you talk in stories and I try to bullet it. But some of the bullets I extracted from your story, number one is you have to have strong leadership that encourages these kind of collaborations. Number two is sort of grassroots-ish. Don't be afraid to reach out to these people and just walk a mile in their shoes. Like, even if it's a brown bag or a lunch, this is sort of how it starts, especially at the lower ranks. Number three, and you didn't really say this exactly, but you sort of implied maybe some cross-training. Like if the data scientists knew, even if they don't expect to do it, but if they knew more about what the data engineers are doing, data engineers knew more about what data science are doing, they may have more appreciation for each other.
Yeah,
like I appreciate the heck out of data people because I don't like doing that stuff and they love it. And then fourth is, sounds like the whole overarching thing is very culturally, because you talked about tolerating the bickering and that sort of thing, and stimulating the collaboration. So the fourth thing is to try to encourage culture shifting. And this can happen through an event or, different ways of getting people to work together. So does that make sense as far as how do we...
Yeah, absolutely. And then, data management is part of what I rant and preach about all the time. It touches every part of the organization, literally, and they're not always in the room when a lot of these big decisions are made. Even things as natural as I see as enterprise software implementation, is the value of that's inextricably linked to the output of the data management department. Because if there's bad data going into a CRM or an ERP, it's just not going to work well. Everything demos beautifully, but once you get your own stuff in it, it's a different story.
Right.
So I'm not necessarily, the data managers I don't think are guiltless in all this. They tend to be, historically kind of in the back room, a little quieter. They have their own language. So I wrote a whole book for them on how to talk about it, because I know that there's a communication barrier no matter what.
Yeah. Remind us in the name of your book.
Sure. Absolutely. Oh, just happen to have it right here. Tell your data story. The storytelling for data management. It says right on there, 99% buzzword free. That's my style. I don't want to overpromise. So there's probably a few in there.
There might be.
But a conversational way to just talking about data in a business accessible fashion. So people support and fund the important work that these folks are trying to do. Data is the foundation to so many things in an organization. Horizontal value.
It is definitely the blood, for sure. What final piece of advice would you give, Scott Taylor, for someone trying to align their IT data science or IT data functions with data science?
Go meet a data steward. Go meet a data manager.
I love it.
Talk to them, as I mentioned. Tell them what your munging process is and see if they have that figured out somewhere. They won't have all of it, but if you look at those things like duplicates, hierarchies, taxonomies, geographies, I actually call those the 4 C's of data structuring, on entity ontology, master data, whatever you want to call it. A code, a company, a category, and a country.
Love it.
Those are, unique identity, parent-child relationships, categorization, types, subtypes, and so on, and then geographies. What doesn't have those, if not multiple pieces of those in any type of analysis.
Get to
Find the
know
people
it.
who are charged with that. That's what they do. They built a business glossary. They have all these common definitions. They went through the organization to say, what do we call a customer? What do we call a product? If you're struggling as a data scientist in some of that 60% of your time, 90%, whatever it is, figuring that stuff out, odds are pretty good. If you work in a large organization, it's been done already.
Yeah, yeah.
And it will make your work that much more acceptable. Because imagine doing this beautiful model that'll help with predicting customer churn, and you're using a bad data set that's got a whole bunch of duplicates. And so you're actually predicting that this entity will churn when this entity is loyal. And it's actually the same thing because you haven't unduplicated the data because you didn't go to the right source.
Well, even if there aren't duplicates, if that's been cleaned by the data scientist, there are still some, like I know many places where I've worked where I'll go to use a data set and people will say, oh, that's just garbage. Don't even use that data set. That's not good. And I'm like, why are we capturing it? How is it so bad? And oh, well, there's this one that has almost the same name, this data set, but it's actually good. And I'm like, who's supposed to know this? And I mean, the data people know it. That's why these conversations.
They should know. Yeah. Data catalogs, data lineage. There's all these systems there. So I feel like there's an opportunity there, Beverly. Thanks for letting me tell you. I feel like,
absolutely.
Can we get these worlds to come together? Truth plus meaning. That's the golden combo.
Thank you. This is great. Thank you so much. Thanks again to Scott Taylor for talking to us about aligning IT data functions with data science efforts.
Thank you, Beverly.